So actually going into Syracuse, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had no clue what it actually meant or like what the word is. It was just super buzzy, and kind of like what I wanted to brand myself as. So going to school, I was actually in the business school and the tech school. And so the entrepreneurship club, it was about 20 students. It was just so, there was just so much opportunity there because on a campus of 20,000 students, there has to be more than 20 entrepreneurs. And so I kind of took that, I ran with it. I became friends with every single person in the club. All of the executive board I was really good friends with. And so I built my brand up to become president within basically a year. And so by doing that, I leveraged kind of like my personal brand. I was also working around campus as a brand ambassador for an app called Drunk Mode. And it's pretty difficult not to be the most popular person on campus if you like just working for the app, like just automatically made me super popular.
What is Drunk Mode? Just real quickly, what is it?
Drunk Mode was an app that let you block yourself from drunk dialing people before you went out. And then it also let you record and kind of like track the location within 24 hours. So if you blacked out and lost something, if you wanted to figure out what parties you went to, what frat houses you stopped at, it would share you all that information.
Okay. Now, Sarah, you had this club that was 20 people, and then you grew it to how many people?
Over 500 within a year and a half.
And that essentially got you kicked out of the club.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. So Sarah got kicked out of this club. She was told by someone that worked at Syracuse that you could no longer be running this club. Sarah, tell us what happened there.
Yeah, so it was kind of like my first real experience with digital marketing. I was throwing this huge event for campus, thanking all these 500 people who joined the club. And I didn't get any sponsorship from the school itself. So I relied on outside sponsorships, got a bunch of money from there. The only issue was I was focusing on so much on the logistics, the operations behind the event, I forgot to actually market it. And so a week before the event was starting, I was like, okay, what's something that every single student has other than a Facebook page, other than maybe a Twitter account? And the answer was email. And for me, it wasn't so difficult to find emails because I knew of this tool called Hunter. And basically what it does is it finds, maybe you talked about it a little bit, but what it does is if you have the URL or the domain of a website, it finds it not only finds what's available online, but it also suggests the other missing people who have emails with it. So from that, I was able to get 5,000 emails. And I shot out an email blast.
So you essentially grab 5,000 Syracuse email addresses, and then you email 5,000 people.
Right, but kind of like it was my start of digital marketing, and kind of what's really important about marketing is you have to know your market. And so in those 5,000 emails I was sending, I didn't do any filtering. I just sent it out to professors. I sent it out to program coordinators, all this, like I sent it right to the business school too. And what was interesting about the email was it wasn't just a flyer about the event. The subject was very clever. The subject was lost keys on Marshall Street. And that was so people would open up the email and then they would see the flyer. Because I knew that if I just sent out an email saying like, hey, there's an entrepreneurship event, no one would care. And so just coming up with a creative way to just get in front of people's faces. The business school absolutely hated. They kicked me out with there was no discussion. It was just on the phone. You're out of here. See you never. Send all of the transfer all of the accounts over to the vice president. They're taking over from now.
Sarah, we talked a little bit about the beginning with mindset, and you're one of the best people I know at this in terms of positivity. Weren't you knocked down after? I mean, how did you what was going through your head when that happened? Because you had worked so hard to build the club up. Here you are doing something to try to get more of an audience so that you could help more people become entrepreneurs. The intent was pure, and yet someone looked at the tactic and without discussion said, you're out. Like, what was going through your head, and how did you recover from that?
Yeah, so I took a day to kind of I cried for a day, not gonna lie. I didn't talk to anyone for 24 hours, just kind of like handling it. But at the same time, I had this job with Banff Media lined up. Like I knew I was gonna get it. They didn't actually give me the offer, but 4 months prior, I was talking with the CEO almost every single day, doing free work for them, and just getting my foot in the door. So when they pulled the trigger and kind of said, you're out, I was actually already prepared for it. I was training the vice president to take over my position. I was already prepared for everything to happen, and it just really helped actually my story and helped my branding. And little did I know it.
Like a little bit of a rebel brand, right? A little bit of a rebel.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So Sarah, so you didn't just drop, just for clarity, you didn't just you got kicked out of the club, but then you just dropped out of Syracuse to work for Banff.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because the story is fascinating. Because the session is like, how do I get my job somewhere? So Banff was on your radar. That was a company that you wanted to work for. Take us through that. Like, how did you get on Josh's radar, who's the co-founder? Like, walk us through the early steps there.
So just a little bit of information about the company itself. The company is owned by a LinkedIn influencer. This guy has millions and millions of views on all of his content. He's great at content marketing. And so actually the vice president of the Entrepreneurship Club, back in January, shot me a text and said like, hey, check out this company. They have an internship available. Wouldn't it be so cool if we like tried for it? And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. So, so we kind of like made a competition who can get like an interview first, who can get the job first. And so I think actually he never actually sent out an application, but I sent out my application. It was like a generic, like like one of those big like job listing sites. And I didn't hear anything back. And so what I did was I looked through my Facebook groups, and actually I was in a marketing group. So like a Facebook group just filled with a bunch of different marketers sharing their ideas. And I was lucky enough to actually post some content on there. So a few ideas on kind of like, I think one was how to get data through Snapchat, that people thought was super interesting. It was like really digestible and easy to understand. And actually one person from Banff sent me a friend request and a LinkedIn request from just me creating content. So we were already connected. I shot him a quick Facebook message saying, hey, like I saw you were just hired here. I just applied as well. I'd love to just hear your experience just starting out working with them. And the guy actually said, you know what better to hear from than the CEO himself? Shoot him a message and I'm sure he'll get back to you. And so it's not every day that happens, and I'm very well aware of it. But it was the opportunity. I saw like a clear opportunity as soon as he said that. It gave me a direct referral. So it's not just me reaching out to the CEO and saying, hey, I'd love the job. It's like, hey, Hunter told me to reach out to you. He said that like I had a bunch of questions I wanted to ask. Could I like grab a few minutes of your time? I applied for this job. And so actually another like really lucky thing for me is that the guy who I initially reached out to, he talked about me in the office the next day. And so that was like an extremely warm intro for me. And so
is it luck though, Sarah? But this is not really luck per se, that this content that you created was compelling enough to get Hunter's attention. And then somehow you connect with Josh, and then you're getting meetings for him. Like what's going on? Like, how do you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I connected with Josh. The issue was I knew I was the perfect fit for the company. I needed to convince him that I was the perfect fit. And then not only that, but I needed to convince him to give me some work just to prove it, because I'm a college student. I wasn't doing great in classes. I stopped showing, I didn't go to class for a few months. And like just my resume,
a fine role model, guys, a fine role model, Sarah setting for everyone here. Sorry, go ahead,
Sarah. So I just had to convince him to give me some work. And so he didn't want to give me an executive assistant work. He didn't want to give me stuff that I wouldn't actually be doing. I said, I don't care, just give it to me so I can prove I'm worth it. And so what he ended up doing was he sent me a list of maybe 100 different LinkedIn URLs with different profiles. He says, I want to have lunch with every single person on this list. Do it. So I came up with this whole system, an Excel, like a Google sheet of different ways on how to like figure out who's the best person to reach out to first, different copy, a lot of testing, and he was just impressed with that. So I didn't actually do any work, like any execution. I just showed him my thought process. And so he goes, okay, exactly. And so what was a really key important part was I included like a dashboard or an analytics part to it. And a lot of people, like especially when you want jobs, make sure you don't actually execute, but you report the results. Because especially if you're in a growth or a marketing position and with a startup, everyone is super focused on results.
What do you elaborate on that a little bit, Sarah, for people that might not be aware of what that means specifically?
Yeah. So for him, it would be like, I would say like, I didn't actually book the meetings at that time, but I'd say like meetings, I would just have like a dashboard available saying like meetings booked, people reached out to, people response rate, kind of like all those analytics. So it was really easy for Josh to just digest and understand what was going on, because he's a busy guy. He's in touch with a million people, and just giving him really simple information that's important to him made his life easier. And at the end of the day, that's why you're hired, is to make other people's lives easy.
And then once you dropped out, he immediately picked you up.
Yeah. So it's kind of before that. So I gave him all this this spreadsheet of how I was going to do it, and then he said, "Okay, do it for me." And so I was like, "Oh my God, I'm in trouble now." So I ended up actually using his account, reaching out to people. I mastered the copy, the message to send out to people. I was constantly on people's back, making sure that they were responding, and kind of like I was the ultimate poker, I guess. But it was all under his account. It wasn't mine. So that gave me even more pressure, because if I did a spelling mistake, it wasn't me doing the spelling mistake, it was him doing the spelling mistake. And so just kind of taking on that responsibility and on that pressure, it really fired me up. And then I was kicked out of the club. I posted it actually on my LinkedIn account. And when I was kicked out of the club, I took a day to kind of think to myself. And then I got a call from an ex-boss of mine. He was furious, not with me, but just with the whole process on how a student organization can be kind of be taken over by the school. And I don't know, there was no student feedback in the whole process. And so kind of in that time, I was posting on my LinkedIn and saying, hey, this isn't good. People should be knowing, and people should know about this. And I couldn't just go to the dean, or I couldn't just go to the chancellor or whoever it was, because since it's a school, they're all on the same side. And so no one had a voice for me as a student, because I was saying this isn't right. No one was on my side on that point. So I used my LinkedIn to kind of leverage the student audience. I was connected with every student on campus that I could. And so every single time I posted on LinkedIn, my voice was being heard. And so when they finally kicked me out of the club, I posted about it on LinkedIn, and the CEO of BAMF was, like I mentioned, all over LinkedIn, millions of views. He happened to see it, and he's like, holy shit, this, I didn't tell him I was sending out these 5,000 emails. I didn't tell him I knew how to scrape emails. I didn't tell him I could come up with clever email copy. And just seeing the response I got on LinkedIn, it really flipped the switch. He literally gave me a job that day. He sent me the offer letter after 4 months of doing free work for him. It was the craziest day of my life. I was so upset and then so happy at this. It was ridiculous.
And I remember seeing videos of you, Sarah, when you were moving to LA, and how happy you were. You're walking the streets. You're on cloud nine. You got this great, and then guess what, everybody? She gets knocked down again. It doesn't work out at BAMF. And now you're unemployed again. And again, within a couple weeks, you are now at another company. You're demand. And Sarah, for people that are in the audience, the college students, if they're just getting started, with LinkedIn, and then, you know, you have such a presence, but you didn't always have a presence. You didn't always have a brand.
Right.
Maybe you were like a lot of the students in the classroom that didn't have any. What's like a thing you would recommend to sort of get started to build your brand? Now you have very much a rebel brand, your personality.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that everyone has that brand, but how do you find your voice, and how do you, hey, I could see people in the audience. I'm not a writer. I don't have a brand. I don't know. I can't do what Sarah does. Like, talk to them about what advice you might have for them to get started building their brand.
Right. So, I mean, like, honestly, right now it's super easy to build a brand on LinkedIn. Just like noticing all the changes when I started, it was not a social network. It was like maybe the same 5 people on my feed every single time I checked. Now it's like super clustered. Everyone's posting. It's really, really easy to just feel comfortable posting content now. But for as students, the easiest way to come up with ideas for content is just post your coursework. Like, repurpose that. It's the easiest thing. You're already doing the work. You might as well get an actual return on it. If it make sure it's branded for what you want to get a job in. So like, make sure maybe it's not like the fun, maybe it's not like the fun courses that you take as electives that like you're really like it. I would post like more like major specific courses. Repurpose that, turn your papers into articles on LinkedIn. If you have a presentation, ask for someone to record it and post it as a native video on LinkedIn. It's really easy to come up with content around that. And then it just like makes you more relevant, because I know like if I see someone constantly posting on LinkedIn, in the back of my head, like a lot of people reach out to me and say like, I'm looking for this person, I'm looking for this person. And it's so easy to like, just think of people to recommend and suggest for jobs if they're always on the top of my mind and post content.
And I've also seen that, Sarah, you evolve. I mean, at the beginning, you weren't as smooth as you are now, especially on video. I know we're not saying anything you don't know. Your language wasn't smooth. You had a lot more like ums and ahs. And I think I actually made a video about this.
Yeah.
I actually made a video of the evolution of Sarah. And kind of showed like her. So talk a little bit about those early days and what's to be expected when you start doing this kind of stuff.
So how LinkedIn works is really great. It promotes really great content. And so when you post something, only your network is going to see it. And probably most likely not all of it, but what makes it grows and what makes it, kind of like what helps it reach other people is when people like it. So if you start posting really shitty content, don't worry, no one's going to see it. And so that's kind of like what I realized in the beginning was it's okay if I just post and post and post. That one post that people are going to like, it's going to go crazy. People are going to love it. And so I kind of figured out what that was. That was my Tech in 10 videos. And it kind of
talk a little bit about that real briefly, because I know we have to wrap up, but what is that? That's a TV show that you have on, I call it a TV show because I'm an old Jewish. But talk a little bit about that. What exactly is that? How'd you come up with it?
Yeah, so hashtags are actually really new on LinkedIn. Like I said, it was not a social network. And so that was introduced maybe 5 or 6 months ago. And so there was a whole bunch of content creators coming together and doing a hashtag campaign called 10 Tips, 10 Days. And like within 10 days of it, like everyone on LinkedIn was doing it. And so I didn't want to just be another number. I wanted to create a brand for myself. And so I posted a video saying, I love this hashtag. I love all the whatever is going around, but I want to do something for myself. And so that's where Tech in 10 came in with the 10-day hashtag campaign, where every single day I'd post a growth hack. And you guys probably don't even know what growth hacking is. Most people don't. And that was kind of the idea, is expose what I'm great at and make it more tangible, make it more knowledgeable, make it more understood on what my expertise was. And so that's a great way if you guys want to start a brand on LinkedIn. Find a hashtag, create a hashtag, come up with like 10 days of content and just do like a blitz, like a blitzkrieg or blitz marketing, where it's just every single day pounding. And I guarantee you by the 10th day, if it's quality content that you actually care about, people will care too. And so
so this is the takeaway here for me, at least. You can't learn how to drive a car by watching videos about how to drive a car. You have to drive a car.
Exactly.
You can't learn sales, you have to do sales. And congratulations, everybody at USC. You're now an executive producer of your own show. You don't have to ask for anyone's permission.
Seriously. And I always think about like, should I add LinkedIn in my job experience, in my experience on LinkedIn? Because technically I'm the lowest paid employee of LinkedIn. I'm a content creator. And so that's always something in your mind. Like if anything, if you spend years not finding a job, you can always go back and say like, I'm a content creator for LinkedIn. And trust me that like just a content creator on LinkedIn, that job is super hot right now. If you can come up with interesting content, like if I want to go all in on LinkedIn, I could probably have like 20, 30 clients within a day, just because everyone wants to get on the network.
Awesome stuff. Guys, takeaway, follow Sarah Grosz on LinkedIn. Don't send her a connection request unless it's an interesting one. Don't just send a request. Put a little note in there about how much you thought she was awesome at this talk, and mention something, and I'm sure she'll accept you. Then you'll have access to all her content. Sarah, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Josh.
Guys at USC, thank you so much for being such a great audience.
Yeah, thank you guys. Seriously, reach out. Happy to jump on a call, help you with content. I love getting people on the platform.
Take care, guys. Have a good one.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.